At the beginning of the movie, we see a pregnant woman named Ruth screaming while tied to a bed as she's about to give birth. A man and a woman are assisting with her delivery, and Ruth is wearing a necklace. She finally gives birth, but the baby isn't breathing. However, after a few moments, the baby suddenly starts crying. The man names the baby Jonah and unties Ruth's hands. Suddenly, Ruth screams in pain, yelling, "It burns! Get it out!" The man replies, "It's out." Ruth pushes harder, screaming in agony, and the scene cuts.
Comment. Subscribe to Recapss Horror.
The movie then shifts to 30 years later, where we are introduced to Ellen, her mother Laura, and her elder sister Judith. Ellen is seen crying, and we learn that her parents' relationship isn't going well, which deeply upsets her. Laura then sends Ellen and Judith off to school. Outside, Judith meets her boyfriend. When Ellen asks what she's doing, Judith tells her that she's going out with her boyfriend and warns her not to tell their mother. She then leaves with him in his car. We are next introduced to Frank Davis, Ellen's father, who works as a police officer. Due to ongoing arguments with Laura, he has been staying in a motel for the past week. While at work, he goes to place an evidence box in the archive room, but another box accidentally falls. As he picks up the scattered contents, he discovers items from a 1938 case, including the same necklace Ruth wore in the movie's opening scene. He hears faint whispers and seems strangely drawn to it. The scene cuts to Frank knocking on a door. Laura opens it, surprised, and asks what he's doing there. He replies that this is his house too. Reluctantly, Laura lets him in. They all sit down for dinner. Frank asks Judith about her school project. She replies that it ended 2 weeks ago, and she got a C. Ellen then brings up David, Judith's boyfriend. Judith defensively says that David is just a boy from school. When Frank asks more about David, Judith angrily snaps, asking why he's even there, pretending like they're one big, happy family. To change the topic, Frank offers everyone dessert and gives Laura a small box. When she opens it, she finds the same necklace inside. She puts it back, saying, "Are you trying to buy me off?" Judith storms off angrily. Frank says he should leave now. Ellen tries to stop him, but he insists that he has to go. Upset, Ellen hugs her father tightly before he leaves. Later, as Frank is about to leave, he tells Laura that she's hurting the girls by not letting him stay. Ellen overhears their conversation. Laura replies that the girls are fine. Frank taunts, "You're eating in your work clothes, your daughter got a C, and she's running around with some boy. This is not fine," he adds. "You can't do this on your own." Laura firmly responds, "I've been doing this on my own for a long time." Frank notices Ellen listening from a distance and quietly leaves. Later, we see Laura throwing the necklace into the trash. Ellen asks why she's being so rude to Dad, but Laura ignores the question and walks away. The scene cuts to Ellen in her room. She has taken the necklace out of the trash and puts it on. Suddenly, the lights begin to flicker for a moment before returning to normal. Ellen hears a noise behind her and turns around. Meanwhile, Judith is studying in her room when she hears Ellen talking to someone. Curious, she goes to Ellen's room and asks what she's doing. Ellen says she's reading a book. Judith says, "That book is for babies." Ellen replies, "I'm reading it to the little boy." Judith asks, "What boy?" Ellen says, "You scared him away." Judith tells her she's too old for imaginary friends and too young for imaginary boyfriends. She takes the book from Ellen and notices the necklace around her neck. Judith asks why she's wearing it. Ellen says, "Mom threw it away." Judith warns her, "You can't let Mom see you wearing that." Ellen insists, "It's from Dad." But Judith removes the necklace from her neck. Ellen then asks why their parents are fighting. Judith explains her that they're grown-ups and grown-ups fight all the time. It has nothing to do with us. The scene then cuts to Laura, who is smoking and drinking alone. She walks toward the kitchen when her pet bird suddenly starts screeching loudly. Behind her, a dark figure can be seen standing still. Laura calms the birds, sensing something behind her. She turns to check, but no one's there. We then see Judith studying in her room when she suddenly starts hearing whispers. She picks up the necklace and feels strangely drawn to it. Sensing a presence, she turns and spots a kid closing the door. Thinking it's Ellen, she gets up. But Ellen's door also slams loudly. Judith tries to open it, but it's locked. Moments later, the door creaks open on its own. She enters Ellen's room and sees her sleeping under the blanket. Suddenly, blood seeps through it. Judith screams and pulls it off, only to find no one there. She then sees Ellen, covered in blood, walking toward her with a smile, holding the necklace. Hearing Judith scream, Laura rushes in and finds everything normal. Judith insists Ellen was covered in blood, but Laura dismisses it as a bad dream. Judith, shaken, says it felt real. The next morning, Judith opens the fridge, and suddenly her boyfriend David shows up. Startled, she asks what he's doing there. He says he just came to say hi and asks where everyone is. Judith tells him her mom is at work and her dad doesn't live there anymore. When David asks why, Judith explains that her mom wanted to go back to work, and her dad got angry. He was drunk, she adds. Meanwhile, Ellen is seen talking to someone. She uses alphabet blocks to spell her name and asks for her friends. Her friend arranged the blocks to spell Jonah, Jonah. Suddenly, a bookcase tips over toward Ellen. Judith and David rush into the room after hearing the noise. Ellen tells Judith that Jonah saved her. Judith asks, "Who?" Ellen says, "Jonah was here." Judith replies, "Your imaginary friend?" Ellen insists, "He's not imaginary. He was right here." Just then, Laura arrives, demanding to know what's going on. Judith tells her that Ellen knocked the bookcase over. Ellen protests that it fell on its own. Laura notices Ellen's injured arm and asks if the bookcase fell on her. Ellen says, "No, Jonah pulled me out of the way." Her mom is surprised to hear about Jonah. Judith teases Ellen, and she storms off in anger. Laura then asks Judith about David, who leaves shortly after. Laura tells Judith that when she's not home, she expects her to look after Ellen, not have boys over. Judith snaps, "I'm not her mother." "What's your excuse?" Laura responds, "I was at work." Judith retorts, "Maybe Dad's right, you shouldn't be." Later, Laura asks Ellen what really happened. Ellen says she already told her. She then asks why Laura doesn't allow Dad to come back. Laura replies, "It's complicated." Ellen presses, "Because you have to go to work?" Laura says, "It's not that I have to. You know how you feel when you're sick and can't leave the house to play with your friends? That's how I feel. Your dad is at his job all day. You and your sister are at school, and I want a life of my own. I like going to work." Ellen asks, "Doesn't he want to be here?" Laura says, "He does. He wants to be with you, but we need to figure some things out between us first." Meanwhile, Judith is studying when she starts hearing whispers again. She immediately takes the necklace out of her bag. Suddenly, their pet birds start shrieking loudly. She goes to cover their cage with a cloth. As she turns, she spots Jonah sitting on her chair before he walks away. Frightened, Judith cautiously moves forward and sees him again, running away. Judith steps closer and finds him standing in the corner, his back turned. She asks, "Are you Jonah?" He turns and runs. Suddenly, Ruth's ghost appears in front of her, throwing her to the floor and vomiting blood on her. Her throat is slashed. Judith screams and rushes to wake her mother, yelling that there's a woman downstairs. Laura comes downstairs to check, but finds nothing. Judith notices the necklace lying on the floor and quickly kicks it under the bed so her mother doesn't see it. Laura tells them there's no one there, but Judith insists it wasn't a dream. Ellen adds that Jonah isn't scary, he's just alone. Their mother stops them and says if they want, they can sleep with her. We then see all three of them sleeping together. Later that night, Laura feels uneasy and drifts into a dream. She finds herself in a red, ominous place, seemingly inside the necklace. She spots Ruth lying there. Ruth says, "He can't love. He only wants to kill," and then vanishes. Suddenly, Ruth appears behind Laura, and the necklace tightens around her neck, choking her. Laura jolts awake, realizing it was a dream. She immediately checks the garbage for the necklace, but it's gone. The next morning, Laura goes to Frank's office to confront him. She asks where he got the necklace. Frank asks why she's making such a big deal of it. Laura explains that it's giving the girls nightmares. He tells her he found it in an evidence box. Laura insists on seeing the box herself. Frank warns that it could jeopardize his job and becomes suddenly aggressive. Laura snaps. "And you wonder why I don't let you into the house?" The scene cuts to Frank showing her the evidence box. He reads aloud that the case involves a mother and son, both found dead in their home. Laura is shocked to learn that the necklace came from a murder scene. Frank continues, saying the police had been called multiple times before, and rumors claimed the child, Jonah, had violent tendencies. The father had left long before the deaths. Frank reads further. The mother had kept the child chained in a barn. The case was ruled a murder-suicide. The son suffocated, presumably by the mother, who then slit her own throat. Laura, seeing a photo of Ruth in the report, freezes, shocked because she recognizes her from the dream. She then reads that the case was handled by Detective Callahan. The scene cuts to Judith on the phone, telling David about last night's incident. As Laura enters, Judith hangs up. Laura asks how she's feeling, and Judith storms off. Laura stops her and asks if she remembers the necklace her dad gave her. Judith says yes and explains that the woman she saw last night had the necklace around her neck. Laura asks if it's still here. She takes Judith to the playroom, where Judith explains she kicked it under the bed, but it's gone. Laura then asks, "Where's Ellen?" We see Ellen wearing the necklace, swinging with Jonah. As they play, Jonah suddenly disappears, then pushes Ellen's swing violently. She cries for him to stop, but he pushes harder, causing her to fall. Laura and Judith rush to her and find her hand badly injured. Ellen cries in pain. Laura heads to take her to the hospital and scolds Judith for not taking better care of her sister. Judith removes the necklace from Ellen's neck before they leave. Later, Judith sits alone crying. She picks up the necklace and hears strange noises. Suddenly, she is pushed back. Jonah appears in front of her, comes face to face, explodes and enters her mouth, possessing her. The scene cuts to Laura at the hospital. Frank arrives, asking what happened to Ellen. Laura tells him she's out of surgery and will be fine. Frank asks where she was. Laura replies she was on her way back from seeing him. Frank taunts her, saying she can't take care of them. Hurt, Laura leaves. Meanwhile, David arrives at Judith's house. When she doesn't answer, he finds the door unlocked and enters. He searches the house and finds Judith sitting on the floor with her back to him, stabbing her pet bird with a fork. Shocked, he watches as she suddenly turns, gets up, and stabs him in the chest. Snapping out of it, Judith watches David flee in terror. She then realizes she has killed her birds and screams in horror. Later, Laura and Ellen come home and are startled to see Judith. Laura asks why she's wearing the necklace. Judith immediately removes it and hands it to her mother. Laura places it in the freezer. Noticing the birds are missing from the cage, she asks Judith about them. Judith lies, saying she went to feed them and they flew away. Later, Laura manages to get Detective Callahan's contact details and calls him asking to discuss an old investigation. When she mentions the necklace, Callahan reacts with shock. We then see him visiting a hospital, where he meets a woman named Beatrice. He tells her, "We have a problem." The scene cuts to him arriving at Laura's house, introducing her to Beatrice, and explaining that she was connected to the case. Later, Callahan tells Laura that this was the most gruesome case he ever worked on. The son's body had sores all over his wrists and ankles, showing he had been kept outside for a long time. He admits he wasn't entirely convinced they had figured out exactly how the children died. Laura mentions finding a knife in the evidence box. Callahan wonders why the son was chained so long only to be suffocated. "Something's missing," he says. But the case was closed anyway. Laura asks Beatrice if she knew Ruth's family. Callahan explains that Beatrice's sister Martha did. She helped Ruth deliver her baby. Soon, Judith and Ellen join them. Beatrice tells them that Martha had a connection to the spirit realm, as does she. It runs in their family. Ruth went to Martha after years of failing to conceive. Martha had tried every fertility charm, but nothing worked. As a last resort, she used the necklace, a charm with a dark history. Believing she could balance its darkness with her own light spells, Martha gave it to Ruth, but she was wrong. Once Ruth wore the necklace, she was doomed. The tragedy that followed haunted Martha until her death. Laura asks about the necklace. Callahan says, Martha begged him to keep it locked in evidence to prevent anyone from unleashing its power again. Laura asks why they didn't destroy it, and Beatrice explains, you can't. It's safer to contain evil than release it. And I am guessing someone here put the necklace on. Judith points to Ellen, admitting she wore it. Beatrice asks Ellen if she saw Jonah, and when Ellen nods, Beatrice warns that the necklace traps tormented souls. Ellen made a connection with Jonah's spirit. Beatrice then attempts to sense what really happened. She closes her eyes and sees visions of Ruth killing Jonah, and then Ruth was murdered. Overwhelmed, Beatrice cries as Jonah's voice echoes, "You can't kill me." She opens her eyes, shaken, saying Jonah is pure evil. Ellen protests, insisting he's not. Beatrice explains Ruth's baby was poisoned at birth by the necklace's evil, and she finally snapped. Laura adds, so she killed her son? Beatrice explains that Jonah's spirit, already a servant of the darkness, returned, killed Ruth, and now he is here. Laura tries to throw the necklace away, but Beatrice stops her, warning that it won't help. Jonah is attached to her now and wants to kill them all. Desperate, Laura begs her to do something. Beatrice and Callahan decide to hold a seance to communicate with Jonah's spirit and trap him back inside the necklace. Judith refuses to take part and storms out, and Laura admits she can't force her daughters to join, to which Beatrice agrees.
You're still watching? Good. Like, comment, and subscribe to Recapss Horror.
The scene cuts to Beatrice lighting a candle, explaining that the flame will extinguish itself once the spirits have left. Laura and Ellen join her, performing the ritual. Beatrice instructs, "We must create a positive energy field. The ascendancy of love leaves little room for evil to take hold. Fear is their way in. Whatever you see, whatever happens, you must abandon your fear for this ritual to succeed." She cuts her hand and asks Laura and Ellen to place their hands on the necklace and close their eyes. She says, "Jonah, come here, be with us. We are waiting. If you can't come to us, allow us to enter your world." Suddenly, they are pulled into the world inside the necklace. Ellen opens her eyes and sees Jonah hiding under a table. Looking frightened, Beatrice calls out, "Jonah, you are not welcome here. This is a house of love." Meanwhile, Judith begins getting possessed. Ellen pleads with Beatrice to stop, saying, "Don't scare him." Beatrice then senses another spirit, Ruth. The table shakes violently. Beatrice repeatedly commands, "You are not welcome here," as Judith begins levitating in her room. Blood flows from Beatrice's eyes, and she finally succeeds in banishing the spirits of Ruth and Jonah, returning everyone to the real world. Judith collapses onto her bed with a loud thud, drawing everyone's attention. Callahan rushes to check, but Beatrice notices something is wrong. The candle is still burning, meaning the spirit hasn't left. Suddenly, Judith, still possessed, pushes Callahan down the stairs, killing him instantly. Panic erupts as Judith screams uncontrollably. Laura rushes to calm her, but she cannot be soothed. The scene cuts. Beatrice tells Laura they are missing a crucial piece of the night Ruth died. She asks Laura to recall exactly what was in the evidence box. Laura mentions reports, pictures, and a knife. Beatrice says, "The knife from that night? We need it to understand clearly." She instructs Laura to ask Frank for it. Laura protests that he doesn't believe in such things, but Ellen manages to convince Frank to retrieve the knife. In the next scene, Beatrice focuses on the knife while Ellen touches Beatrice and closes her eyes. They both see a vision. Ruth is preparing dinner for Jonah, then going to the barn. It is revealed that Jonah had a twin brother, William, who was the evil one. Jonah was innocent. Ruth notices Jonah's toy near William and rushes to scold Jonah for going into the barn. One day, she hears Jonah screaming and finds him lying dead. William has stabbed him. Ruth buries Jonah, but William attacks her with a knife. Ruth manages to suffocate him and kill, but William's spirit yells, "You can't kill me!" The necklace chokes Ruth, and William's ghost slits her throat, killing her. Beatrice and Ellen then return to reality. Beatrice realizes they banished the wrong boy. She explains to Laura that William, not Jonah, was infected by the necklace and is still present. At that moment, Judith arrives there and collapses. Everyone rushes to her as she trembles violently before suddenly going still and closing her eyes. Suddenly she opens her eyes, grabs scissors, and attacks, screaming, "You can't kill me!" She strikes again, but Frank restrains her. The spirit exits her body, and she vomits, passing out. Beatrice then explains that William is inside Judith, trying to control her. She warns that once the soul fully occupies her, expelling it will be much harder. Laura insists they must act. Beatrice notes that Jonah was appearing to Ellen for a reason. He was trying to possess her so that William could pass on. She says they must take Judith to the farmhouse, where Jonah and William were born to contain the spirit. They arrive at the farmhouse. Following Beatrice's instructions, Frank lays Judith on the bed where the twins were born. Beatrice advises him to restrain her. Frank hesitates, unsure what to do. Beatrice tells him, "You carry the energy of a man tormented by past mistakes. What happened to your family? You know deep down whose fault it is. If you want to help your daughter, leave your shame at the door." Frank and Laura then tie Judith's hands to the bed. Beatrice instructs, "Remember, we are creating a field of love. Love is the key. It will be very hard to convince William to leave Judith, but we can do it. We can do it if we work together." Beatrice begins the ritual, calling out to William, "We have come to your birthplace. Come be with us." Suddenly, Judith's body shakes violently. Beatrice yells, "Abandon this vessel." Judith screams back, "I will kill you first. I will kill you all." She breaks free, grabs a knife, slashes Frank's throat, and flees. Before dying, Frank apologizes to Laura and Ellen. Beatrice urges, "We have to finish the expulsion before it's too late." They reach the barn, and Beatrice senses William's presence. They enter, searching for Judith. Suddenly, Judith stabs Beatrice in the leg and then on her back. Ellen grabs the necklace and runs with Laura, hiding. Laura tells Ellen she'll confront Judith and ask her to escape. Laura steps out cautiously. Judith attacks her, and they struggle. Meanwhile, Beatrice approaches Ellen, who pleads for help to bring Jonah back. Beatrice places her hand on Ellen's head, sending her into the spirit world. There, Ellen finds Jonah. She asks for his help. Jonah replies, "You sent me away." Ellen says, "We were wrong. We need your help." He agrees and enters Ellen's body. Back in the barn, Judith is about to kill Laura when Ellen, now possessed by Jonah, stops her. Judith gasps, "Jonah?" An intense struggle ensues. Judith starts strangling Ellen. Jonah, through Ellen, says, "William, I'm sorry for what happened to you. I never wanted you to be left alone." Judith refuses to believe him. Jonah continues, "Wherever you go, I go," pulling her close. He says, "I love you." Hearing this, William's heart softens and Judith collapses, trembling violently. Ellen hugs her, and William's spirit leaves Judith's body. Laura regains consciousness and rushes to her daughters. Jonah's spirit leaves Ellen. Laura immediately removes the necklace from Ellen's neck and throws it away. Judith gasps and hugs Laura. They embrace, united. Beatrice watches them, and the scene fades out, ending the movie. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the chills, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scare. Until next time, stay spooky.